Hello traders, welcome to another video. We're going to be looking at a couple of different markets here, mainly looking at stock markets, the US dollar, and then taking a look at cryptocurrencies, mainly Bitcoin. We did have a pretty big dip after kind of reaching just above the 60K zone. We will look at that a little bit later, but we first wanted to take a look at the more traditional markets. First at the S&P 500. We have been talking about this within our Discord after it broke above like the 3880 zone, talking about that expanding wedge breakout to the upside. You're seeing lots of buy volume coming, and I overall think we're going to get to around like 40, 50, definitely passing the 4K mark in my opinion in terms of an all-time high, and we do see a very well-respected ascending trend line there. Now, overall, this is not looking fantastic on a larger picture because expanding zones aren't fantastic. I don't love huge expanding wedges, but then if you're looking at it, for example, from the weekly chart, we also saw an expanding wedge that broke to the upside. So this was our major level of resistance. Let's just make that red. And as we can see, initial level of rejection, second, third, and then we break, retest very beautifully. Okay, let's just move that. Break, retest beautifully as we can see, and then we continue to trend higher, and this is where I drew in the nice ascending zone. So if we are going to see a massive melt to the US dollar to the downside with the stimulus checks, the dovishness from the central banks, in my opinion, we will see a move to the upside for traditional assets like the NASDAQ, S&P 500, as well as BTC and a lot of crypto. So I think those are the things that are going to be really moving. I think gold and silver are going to be doing pretty well, but I think the capital is getting kind of taken away from them and going into crypto is my personal belief. And I think a lot of funds and individuals are actually paying more attention to crypto, especially BTC, compared to gold and silver. So that's my personal view. Obviously, everyone has their opinions. Peter Schiff would disagree with me, but hey, everyone has their opinion. So overall, we see lots of volatility coming into the market, but in short, I do think that that next push to the upside is going to arrive passing the 4,000 mark for the S&P 500. So that is going to allow other risk on assets to have the door to move to the upside. We're looking at Bitcoin, in my opinion, going to have a pretty quick recovery here. We will look at the zone of confluence that there is currently for the demand in BTC. We'll also take a look at Ethereum because it is holding a very nice strong level of support, and then we'll take a look at some options if that does inevitably or potentially break down. So that's my view on the S&P. Overall, I think it's going to be moving to the upside. From that point, we might see another move to the downside, but overall, the fact that we broke up above this ascending level of resistance, and now we are clearly trading well above the zone, even on a monthly chart, we see really an extremely bullish price action pattern, in short, in my opinion, which is pretty unbelievable. But you got to be comparing an asset to another thing. US dollars moving to the downside, that's going to give a lot of, I guess you could say, tailwind to these assets like the S&P 500. So in my opinion, we're going to be continuing to move to the upside for the S&P. So that's going to be creating a lot of bullish assets or speculative assets to move in a bullish fashion, in my view. And then this is the US dollar right here. We did see a nice reversal on the 2-day with a huge wick to the upside, got rejected, smashed right back down below the actual open of the candle on the 2-day, which is very great to see for this reversal. And then this 92 point, let's say 2 to 91.8 zone is our major level of resistance. We want to see the US dollar hold below this major level. Now, we will probably be consolidating here for a little while, in my opinion, like between the 88.5 to the 91.8 level, just because this is such a strong level of support. Looking back at the monthly, we see that was our major level of a bottom that we had in around 2018, and that's going to be the completion if we do break to the downside for this major double top. So if it does break, in my opinion, we're going to be seeing a massive rally for safe haven assets in terms of inflation. At this point, I think a lot of institutions, even mutual funds and more traditional entities, are looking at Bitcoin as a store of value. Now, I do think it's good to have exposure in gold, silver, miners in some situations, but cryptocurrencies are the place to be if you have to be somewhere, in my opinion. So we're going to be looking at that a little bit later on in the video. But overall, large time frame shows weakness. Going on to a smaller time frame, US dollar showing weakness. Overall, I am going to have an expectation that this is going to take another test of the downside. Potentially, we will have to look at a nice rounding bottom, and then hopefully we'll see a nice failure. Unfortunately, we didn't see a failure here, so we have to, basically prepare for the unexpected. But price action at this point, in my opinion, is still looking bearish. So then the ideal situation for the price to kind of go is dwindle down to the downside, and then we'll be seeing a potential double bottom, and then it's just a matter of if we're going to be breaking to the upside or continuing to break to the move to the downside and break the actual support here, in case that would be a very, very bullish situation for BTC and altcoins. So in my opinion, that's the next move on the US dollar, is a move to the downside. Slowly, it's not going to be an absolute instant shot to the downside, but I think the overall direction for the US dollar is going to be testing these lows that we had back in kind of the start of 2021 here. So that's going to be those two assets. We'll take a step back here, and then we'll be looking at BTC as well as the Bitcoin dominance chart. So we'll first take a look at Bitcoin, and then we have to our right the Bitcoin dominance chart, where it is holding very, very well. So let's first take a look at Bitcoin, taking a look at the weekly chart, and then we'll zoom into a smaller time frame. So 60K level, which was a major level for multiple factors. The first one, obviously, major psychological zone, very round number. We also saw it as our target for our descending wedge we'll look at within the smaller time frames, as well as the reversal in the reverse head and shoulders. So we will look at that in the kind of 4-hour, 2-hour time frames. But looking at the weekly, we do see overall we are trending pretty well. In my opinion, we are going to be kind of going into a more hyperbolic state like we saw in 2017 later on. But right now we are trending very nicely, making a series of higher highs and higher lows. And then we see if I connect these lows, it does create a very well-established zone of confluence for the buyers, which we are pretty close to, around the 51K level. And we'll look at that on a smaller time frame. But in short, we are seeing a very well-structured move to the upside, where you're seeing nice consolidation, which we called absolutely beautifully above the 30K level for that nice strong level of support. And then we saw the nice next level of a pullback, which used the previous resistance as a new level of support within our descending wedge here. And then now, in my opinion, we saw a slight pullback before our next leg higher. So in short, in my opinion, we are moving to the upside. Let's take a look at the 2-day to give a little bit more clarity as to why we think so. So let's take a picture and understand why in terms of technicals, looking at BTC. So there is a high all the way out here if we do connect that trend line right there, but we have a high and a higher high, so we do see a nice series of higher highs getting connected by an ascending trend line. We also see a higher low, higher low, higher low, and this is 3 higher lows, creating a nice ascending support zone. So that's going to be our first validation that the 52 level around there is going to be our strong level of demand. Now, it is getting tighter and tighter in terms of the constriction and volatility, because this ascending trend line is less aggressive than this ascending trend line, creating an ascending wedge. Now, this is a little bit exaggerated compared to what we're seeing right here, but this is basically the two options that we're going to be looking for this ascending wedge. The first option is if we actually melt to the upside, in which case we break the series of higher highs, retest, validate for a new level of support, and then we're going to be looking for buys at that level, in which we're going to be appreciating at a greater rate than we were at this zone here. So that's going to be at that parabolic state, right? Getting more and more aggressive and appreciating at a higher rate of return. So then that's going to be where things get even more volatile. That's going to be option number 1 for this ascending wedge. Option number 2, obviously this is a little bit more exaggerated, is if we do have a failure. So if we hold a series of higher highs and then we have a failure, we're then going to be looking for a smaller formation, something like this. It could be a channel, it could be a wedge, where there's going to be a squeeze after the break to the downside. You're going to have potentially some level of resistance and support hold for some confluence, but we're not going to be looking for an entry until we see the market structure shift. There's going to be some structure right here in which the buyers are holding the price and the sellers still have confidence. At a certain point, one of them is going to give. If the sellers start to give out, you're going to see this shift in market structure go from here to the next level higher, holding previous key levels of resistance as a new level of support, and that's where you want to look potentially bullish in and around this zone. In and around the next zone, like if it breaks to the downside, kind of like this. Won't want to be looking at something like that, for example. So then you're going to be looking for a possible entry somewhere around there. Obviously, we do have a lot of time before that actually occurs, but got to be looking at multiple options a little bit further down the line instead of just looking at immediately what's in front of you. So we will look at a smaller time frame, but those are going to be the two key scenarios that we're going to be looking at to potentially have some leverage trades to the BTC, or at least have a really good understanding of where we're going next. So let's take a look at a smaller time frame. Hopefully you understand the two different scenarios we have in terms of a larger play out for this ascending wedge, but then this upcoming potential reversal here will be a completely different structure because that's just within the ascending wedge formation. So not a whole lot more interesting things on the 2-day. We'll just jump to the 1-day and maybe even go on to the 12-hour, and then we'll talk about the 60K zone, and then we'll discuss why this is such a key level of confluence here. All right, so why is the 60K level such a major zone? Well, initially we had this wedge right here, and then the high to the low, connect this, it's around the 60K zone. So that's your first target, is the geometry of the descending wedge that we broke out of. Number 2 confirmation is the reverse head and shoulders that we currently see right here. This is the left shoulder, head, right shoulder, breakout formation. The distance from the head to the breakout point was roughly 260K. Number 2 confirmation, right? Number 3 is the psychological zone, like we did indicate. So we got that strong push to the upside, hit the target, got a nice exhaustion after the strong impulsive push because this 52K zone was a major level that we did need to hold. And then also we did see a nice ascending formation like so. So we are in a very major key zone of confluence where we see the ascending zone act as a major level of demand, as well as the horizontal zone from the reverse head and shoulders, creating additional support. So 52K zone is a major level of demand in my personal opinion, looking from a large time frame using top-down analysis. So when we're zooming in, we have a couple options here. So let's take a look at the smaller time frame, 6 hour, I believe. Yep. And then we'll look at a couple of options here. So the first option ideally would be something like this. If we get a nice little squeeze. Now in a squeeze, we're looking for 1, 2, 3, right? Where we're getting something along, no, that's not really perfect. This really shows it well. So 1 big one, and then 2, and then 3. There we go. That's exactly what we're looking for. Something like this. Where it's like this, maybe you get a little bit more descending, you get the last little push. But overall, we're looking for 3 waves like we saw here. 1, 2, 3, and then in the previous one it was a descending zone and a horizontal zone, so it was like that. But overall, you're looking for 3 waves within a nice structure. In my opinion, we kind of saw the first one right here, so it'd be ideal to see like a pop and then a little bit of an exit, or like maybe even like an ascending zone like here, and then you get your 3 waves. But I think it's a little bit too early right now. Similar to what we saw right here, you're going to get your first major dump. That's going to shake out a lot of people who have no idea what crypto is about, who get shaken out with like a 10% move to the downside. You got to be a little bit more persistent than that, in my opinion. But when we're looking at the first impulsive push to the downside, this is your sell-off. I think we're going to see some maybe contraction where we're going to see something like this. That would be ideal because then we're holding this nice ascending zone of support. Then that would be looking very, very bullish to then push you up to the highs to connect to this trend line here. So then the next opportunity would be something like this. And then you're looking for a break and a key level of confluence maybe around that 60K zone, and then that next leg higher is going to come. But not just looking at Bitcoin, looking at the US dollar, looking at the S&P, I do think, as well as looking at gold and silver, which is actually doing pretty solid, holding key levels of demand. I think they have bottomed and they're going to be looking pretty solid from here on out for the next little while here, but we're not going to look at all those assets. But using all these different assets, the multi-asset analysis like we like to implement, in my opinion, we do think that there's lots of demand still in Bitcoin, and that the 52K level is going to be a strong level of demand that we're going to be looking to hold for this kind of short-term while here. So looking at a smaller time frame, don't really see a beautiful descending zone yet. Like if we get maybe something where we get first, second, and then a nice last little move to the downside. Let's make this one green, because we like to make it nice and orderly. So that could be our first zone. So then what we do need to see, let's just make that a little bit larger like so. So what we need to see in order to look for a potential reversal here would be the initial push to the downside. So you got your one big wave, and then you got your second wave, and then you got your third wave, and then you got your one holding the support, and then you got your high, and then you got your lower high, and you got your lower high, squeezing the price against this major level of demand. And then once you're going to see the price pop, and then you're going to be looking for that possible entry. So that is another situation in which it could reverse a lot quicker than we initially anticipate, because the US dollar, in my opinion, is USD is moving to the downside. So then that's going to be leaving a lot of situations for appreciation for Bitcoin, for ETH, for other alts, for the S&P 500, for silver, for gold. It's going to be looking pretty good. So that's going to be the shorter term option. We do need to see a nice little leg down, and then you're looking for buys to come in around that 52K level to initiate the bullish push. You're looking for increasing buy pressure. You're looking for high RVol, high relative volume. Compare this to what we saw all here, high relative volume, except you got to combine high relative volume with the price action. VSA plus TA is beautiful work. Volume spread analysis, looking at volume here. So that's going to be the two major things that we're going to be looking at before we look for opportunities. But like we saw in, let's look at the 2 hour. Very similar structure, right? Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and then you get your nice impulsive push to the upside. So in my opinion, we're going to see that nice final little dip to the downside, maybe even breaking below 53, getting into 52s. But I do think that that 52 zone is going to hold, and we're going to see a pretty quick recovery and a move to the upside. So that's going to be my short-term opinion on BTC. And then quick look at the BTC dominance. We are just consolidating. The big question, in my opinion, is going to be, are we going to be holding and then moving back up, in which case BTC would be outperforming a lot of the alts that we're going to be initially talking about, like so. We see higher, higher, low, higher, low, higher, low, higher, low, and you see a nice squeeze here. So we're kind of getting a squeeze. Obviously, this isn't really price action. It's just the percentage of the entire cryptocurrency market that BTC has compared to the rest of the alts. But overall, we are making higher lows, indicating BTC is gaining back market share. It's just a big question of, are we in that speculative state where altcoins are really getting a lot of love because there's so much hype and so much FOMO in the market that, you know, people are basically going to invest in anything that has a ticker or like a name in crypto in the stock market, for example. That would be, in my opinion, move to the downside, where BTC is going to be appreciating, but there's going to be massive inflows of capital coming into these alts, and that's going to be driving the market share of a lot of different alts to the upside. BTC is going to be a great option, but alts will be flying. That's going to be option number one. Option number two is if we get a resurgence of buy pressure in BTC, and then we get another boom in alts, kind of like we saw right here. In summer, we initially started to see BTC really start to, kind of looking back right here, right before October, we saw BTC dominance start to really rise, and very early October is when we initially were calling BTC to have the kind of first impulsive push of the major bull market. And what did we initially see? Bitcoin first took the charge for this bull market, right? We saw massive increases in the BTC dominance, because Bitcoin usually takes the lead first and then alts follow. And that's exactly what we saw. Bitcoin takes the lead, alts follow. So then if we do see, we're seeing a current consolidation, which I totally don't mind. If we see a resurgence of BTC and then we get the dump, I don't exactly know. But in short, even if we get that, I think it'll be less than what we saw right here, because we're already so far into the bull run. It'll be a lower high. We might even see a nice head and shoulders right here if we are looking at it, a nice breakout zone like we talked about right here. And then you have your left shoulder, head. You might have a little bit of a resurgence and then that final move to the downside. And then once you get past the 58, 57% zone for BTC, I think that is where the real speculation in alts will come in. And that's where true alt season will emerge. So that's going to be my view on the Bitcoin dominance chart. I think BTC is definitely the one to look at right now. Obviously, some alts have been doing extremely well. BNB, one of them, just such a top performer. But looking at Bitcoin, I think we do have a lot of life left in terms of this bull market before we start to see the major altcoin frenzy occur. All right, so that's going to be my view on BTC and the BTC dominance. We're going to be looking at Ethereum here, and that's going to be the end of the video. So let's look at Ethereum. On a large time frame, looking at the daily, we do see a nice squeeze with a series of higher lows. Now, in case we do see a little bit of a stumble, this is a larger time frame, great opportunity for Ethereum where we're seeing a squeeze. Now, we are seeing a little bit of a, I guess you could say, a quick move to the upside, because initially what we want to see ideally is another low right here, and then we get another high, lower high right here, because this is a high, lower high, lower high. Even if it's a slight move to the downside, you're getting that third validation, whereas in this case you may get 3 validations, but you get your first right here, you get your second right here, and the third's going to come right here, which isn't ideal. You want to see these nice 1, 2, 3, and then you're getting the pop. So this isn't ideal. This isn't an extremely well-structured formation, but we are seeing a high and a lower high and a nice ascending zone held by these higher lows. So in a perfect world, we'd get another low like this, but I think in my opinion, what we are going to be seeing is a hold here and then just a massive push to the upside. And we'll talk about why on a smaller time frame. First off, same thing, reverse head and shoulders as the same thing as the BTC chart as we talked about. And then looking at this $1,400 zone, why is it a major level? Let's look at the weekly previous all-time high, right? Key zone. We boosted above the zone after we've hesitated to move back up, we move above the zone. We crushed it, moved above, and then we retested it, validated it oh so perfectly for a new level of support. And now we are gearing up for that next leg higher with US dollar weakness. I think this is a pretty perfect opportunity for Ethereum to take its next leg up pretty soon. So we will look at a smaller time frame here. Let's go to the 6 hour. We did see a nice little squeeze right here. And then we did see the higher lows. So this was like a reverse head and shoulders as well as a slight squeeze. But overall, we saw a move to the downside, consolidation, major market structure break when we broke the let's say $1,700 zone. And then now we've retested it multiple times for a new level of support. Now, like we said, it could break to the upside, in which case we'd be looking for this zone around here, around the 1946 to retest before making a next move to the upside. And then the next level of a target, if we're going to be looking at the geometry there, it's going to be looking at around 2,700 for one Ethereum. So then that's a pretty significant move of, like, let's say 40 to 45%. Pretty solid push to the upside. And in my opinion, we're going to have that instead of the option number 2. Option number 2 is we fail to hold let's say 1,700. We make a higher low at like 1,430 from a higher low from here, holding that nice symmetrical triangle, and then we get that third wave, and then we initially have that initial push up, and then you're looking for continuation patterns and all that stuff. But in my opinion, we're not going to see that happen. We're going to be seeing a little bit of a premature exit for Ethereum, but you never know in life, anything can happen. I think looking at both BTC as well as Ethereum, a really good option. Obviously, if you are trading pretty sizable leverage or capital, you don't want to be in these super illiquid tiny alts. You want to be able to get in and out pretty easily. So primarily I am just focusing on these two. You know, top 20, you're not going to have a problem, obviously. But if you're on some like pretty sketchy exchange, might not be the best thing to trade on there if you are trading with some sizable capital. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Lots of opportunities out there in the markets. Hopefully you're profiting off of them. If you have not checked out our Discord, you definitely should. If you think these are valuable, useful, we do post charts and analysis looking at not just what we look at in this video, but we'll do like relative strength and all that stuff. So if you're interested in what we talked about in this video, you'd really love it. Definitely check it out. You can check it out at performante.ca. Really easy to find it. Just join our Discord, and then really you can use it for free, gain value, educate yourself, and try to make the most out of this bull run that we're currently seeing. So hopefully you guys are doing awesome and girls are doing awesome. And until next time, have a good one, traders.